back to Triple Threat Podcast. My name is William Ezel, and today, Pro Bowl rosters were just announced. I should say yesterday. We're a day late on this. But anyways, we're going to be breaking down our thoughts on the lineups, who we would change in and out, and whether people were deserving or not, because every year we know it's a popularity contest. Half the vote is made by the fans, and the fans only know some big-name players. So let's start it off with the AFC and the quarterbacks. We have Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Deshaun Watson. I don't think there's going to be any complaints here. These were the best three by a pretty fair margin.
Definitely.
I think the only real conversation you can make is about Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has been really special, and I think that he's just unfortunate that there's three quarterbacks in the AFC that are all MVP candidates. So although he's had a spectacular season by all accounts, and he's led the best offense in the league, I think Tennessee has more points than Kansas City this season. So he's led an incredibly efficient, high-volume offense, and he's not getting the respect he deserves. So we'll give it to him here. If Pat Mahomes goes to the Super Bowl, he'll have a honorary spot at whatever Madden tournament they hold. So unfortunate for him. And then the next guy I would want to talk about is Justin Herbert. I mean, I wouldn't give him a Pro Bowl this season, but he's played admirably. I know his performance hasn't led to wins at all. But this is my apology to Justin Herbert. I've never seen a bigger year-to-year improvement from college to the NFL than I have seen from Justin Herbert. You can go and watch my film review on him. I watched every game of Justin Herbert, and he was hesitant. He didn't want to throw the deep ball. He was a lot of checkdowns. He wasn't confident. He wasn't very accurate. And then you look at him at the NFL level, he is confident. He is slinging the ball. His arm strength, arm talent is really on display. I mean, I saw the upside, but I didn't see it happening this quickly whatsoever. So definitely deserves to be in the conversation because he has had a great season. And without Anthony Lynn, they might have a couple more wins.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't really think that there are any other quarterbacks in mind, but, hats off to Ryan Tannehill for once again proving us wrong that last season magic was not just a fluke, but actual consistent play.
Then I think the statistic last year was that every deep ball that was catchable that Ryan Tannehill threw was caught. I just thought at the beginning of the season that would regress a little bit because catching 100% of the passes is just not very consistent. So he's done it again. So I think we have to credit Ryan Tannehill's deep ball throwing because it has been great. And with two weapons in Corey Davis and A.J. Brown on display, Tannehill looks like a legit option. I think he's a top 6 or 7 quarterback in this league right now.
Yeah.
So moving on, we have running back for the AFC, Derrick Henry, 100% deserving. I don't think there's anyone questioning that. And then Derrick Henry, or Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs. Now, what do you think about that last pick? Because I think Nick Chubb's deserved it, even though he's missed a good chunk of the season, but he's been dominant when he's played. What do you think about that Josh Jacobs selection?
Yeah, I honestly thought that it should have gone to James Robinson. That's just in my opinion. But once again, Josh Jacobs is a lot more well-known. It's a popularity contest with the whole fan vote at the end of the day. But if you just look at the stats, I know Robinson has played more games, but he has almost 160 or over 160 more yards, almost a yard more on yards per carry, and touchdowns. Oh, Josh Jacobs has touchdowns. But in terms of just yards per game, James Robinson has a significantly higher stat. And I know you have PFF up. What do they say about Robinson and Jacobs?
Well, PFF doesn't like either of them. I think they have about 22 and 26. But I think James Robinson's been really effective. And then I think we see a lot of the problems with Josh Jacobs. He's a bell cow back, but a lot of the times he gets 22 carries for about 70 or 80 yards. I mean, he's not very efficient on his carries. He can break off a lot of good runs. He has the ability to be a high yards per carry guy. But I think a guy that deserves some more conversation, I know he started the season off a little bit a little bit slow. But Jonathan Taylor deserves some conversation for what he's done at the end of the season. Because Jonathan Taylor, when he gets his usage, like Derrick Henry, like if you get him his touches, he will go off. And I think that Frank Reich's finally realizing, okay, maybe putting in Christian Wilkins and Naeem Hines wasn't the greatest idea, and let's let him cook. And then you look at what last game or 2 games ago, first drive, he gets 60 of their yards and first drive touchdown. I mean, putting the ball in his hands has been really effective towards the end of the season. I think Jonathan Taylor deserves a little bit of discussion for what he's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me and you both love Jonathan Taylor coming out of college. I think we both had him as our number one running back. In his last 4 games against Green Bay, Houston, Vegas, and Houston again, he had 90 yards, 4.1 on average, 91 yards, 7 yards per carry. And then against Vegas, he popped off 150 yards, 7.5 yards per carry, and then 2 touchdowns on top of that with a big 62-yard run. And then finally against Houston for the 4th game, he had 83 yards and a touchdown and 5.2 yards per carry. So he's definitely increased his production as the season has gone on chronologically.
I mean, you look at his games. Every game he's had 50-plus snaps. He has had a great game. Minnesota, he had 68% of the snaps. He had 101 yards and a touchdown on 26 carries. Cleveland game, he had 55% of the usage, 57 yards and a touchdown. And then Cincinnati, he had 59, averaged 5 yards a carry, as well as 13.5 per catch. Then moving on towards Green Bay game, 90 yards, as you said, and then he rounded out the season after missing that game to COVID against Tennessee with 7.5, and 5.2 yards per carry. So overall, he's been a very effective runner when used properly. And he's a guy that he needs touches to get his way into the game. You can't play him cold. You have to play him warm. And I think that Jonathan Taylor is proving himself to be a great back.
Yeah, on top of that, adds about 300 receiving yards and an extra touchdown there. So, yeah, I'm really proud of what Jonathan Taylor has done, especially in his rookie year.
And that's where people criticize him a lot is his receiving ability. And I think he's proved that wrong because he's been a very, very solid pass catching back. I don't think he's had a drop all season. So moving on, we are going to talk about wide receivers. So I think Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill really cemented themselves at the top of this class. They've been spectacular all season. Tyreek Hill especially, and we can't describe what Stephon Diggs has done there. Bill's all-time single-season reception leader. He has been phenomenal and really helped Josh Allen develop as a passer. I thought he might get a little frustrated with Josh Allen's deep ball accuracy, but both of them have turned it around. And then you look at his teammate, Cole Beasley's been incredible as well. I don't think he would have ever made a Pro Bowl, but he deserves some consideration. And then the other two guys where you start getting some conversation, Keenan Allen and A.J. Brown. And while they've both been great respectively, would you have anyone over them?
I think that I don't think realistically I couldn't see anyone else over them. And just even keeping in mind the fact that it is a popularity contest, A.J. Brown has just been surging, especially in the red zone, 10 touchdowns, 881 yards. And then Keenan Allen has just been a stalwart, 992 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think Cole Beasley could have been in the mix, but as you said, I don't think that anyone would be voting for Cole Beasley. But also Corey Davis could be in there, as he does have more receiving yards than A.J. Brown.
I was about to mention that. I think Corey Davis has a very strong case for himself to be the better receiver, but I don't think that anyone's questioning talent perspective. A.J. Brown is a much better talent. And I think if you were to give them the same amount of targets, I think A.J. Brown would do a little bit more with them. I think one interesting point would be if Will Fuller didn't get popped. I think he had a real case for himself having a Pro Bowl season. What he was doing down there in Houston, he was having a really, really, really good year. I think there was a streak where he had 6 touchdowns in a row. I think Will Fuller deserves some conversation, but obviously he is not allowed because he was an idiot. So moving on, we have the tight ends, and this could not be the easiest decision of anyone's career. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. I mean, these two guys are studs. Studs. I mean, they're the best two.
Is there anything else to say about it?
They're the best two in the league, so I don't think there's anything else to say. So moving on, fullback Patrick Ricard of the Ravens. Here is a position where you're going to really see popularity become the biggest decider because who knows how good a fullback is doing. So I have PFF open because they watch every snap, and they think that the best fullback this season was Andy Janovich with a pass blocking grade of 90 and a run blocking grade of 68. That is first and second among fullbacks. And then you look, Patrick Ricard's not in the top. He's in the top six. So Andy Janovich really deserved it. What he's done in the run game for the Brownies has been really impressive, and what he's done protecting Baker Mayfield. We've seen Baker Mayfield with pressure and Baker Mayfield without pressure is a completely different quarterback. I think he's really been instrumental and a really great pickup from Denver. So I think a little bit of a snub there, but I don't think anyone's going to be talking about fullbacks too much.
All right, so moving on, we have the offensive linemen. And once again, unlike fullback, this is really the hardest three positions to quantify. And it's really just a popularity contest. You see guys like Laramie Tunsil, Eric Fisher, Orlando Brown that have just always been in the mix for good Pro Bowl talent players. So they just kind of get the nod over some maybe lesser known players that might have deserved it a little bit more. But what is PFF saying?
So first, I'll talk about my perspective on this because I don't think they got any of the tackles right for the AFC. And I'll get into that. So I think Garrett Bowles has had a really great season in Denver, and PFF agrees, 89.2 grade, third among tackles. I don't want to be reading off stats, but what Garrett Bowles has done for this offense, for whoever's playing at quarterback, whether it's Brett Rippon, Drew Lock, or who else have they had at quarterback this season?
Kendall Hinton.
Oh, my God, I forgot about Kendall Hinton. Who's their actual quarterback, though, before Rippon?
I'm not sure.
I know they had Blake Bortles as their 4, but I don't know who their third guy was. I think someone else who deserves conversation for that spot, you have to look at Jack Conklin. As I mentioned before, what the Browns offense has done, it is relying on that run game. It is dominant, that run game is. And you have to look at those big boys up front. And I know that even if you don't look at offensive line stats, if you look at those running stats and you see Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt feasting, there's got to be a reason for that, and it's been this offensive line. Kevin Stefanski has really built this team around their offensive line, and investing in Jack Conklin proved to be a great addition. So I think those are two guys that deserved a nod. And then you look at the New England guys as well. Michael Onwenu was the highest graded player, or highest graded rookie and highest graded tackle for a while. He's fallen off a little bit. And then Isaiah Wynn, both first-year starters. Isaiah Wynn for injury reasons, Onwenu because he's a rookie, have both been really good. Onwenu's had a lot of versatility on the offensive line, playing I think 3 positions this season, guard and tackle. So he's been really impressive in his rookie season. And then Isaiah Wynn has also been a really, really solid guy. And then let's look at where PFF ranks Laramie Tunsil, Eric Fisher, and Orlando Brown. So it might take a while to find them because Orlando Brown's ranked at 24. Laramie Tunsil ranked at 26. Then I think it might take me a while to find Fisher. He's not even the highest ranked tackle he's not even the second highest ranked tackle for the Chiefs. So it's really, as I say, it's a popularity contest every year. So
yeah.
Oh, I lied. Eric Fisher's 19. But anyways, they are neither of them are in the top 18 for tackles in the entire NFL. So I think it's just a really popularity contest at this point. I think guard is a little more solidified because if you're recognized as a guard, it's because you are really good. Quinn Nelson has had a little bit of a down year, but he's still been a really great tackle. Joe Bitonio.
A down year for Quinn and Nelson is still a pretty good year.
Yeah, for sure. Joe Bitonio, as I mentioned, that Browns offensive line deserves a lot of credit. And then David DeCastro, that's where the name recognition starts, but I don't think you can really complain too much. The only other guy I would really talk about there would either be Wyatt Teller, the other Browns guard, or talking about Shaq Mason, because both of those guys, I mean, it's a recurring theme. Brown guys, Patriots guys, really, really solid offensive lines.
So for center, any thoughts on Marquise Pouncey or Ryan Kelly?
Marquise Pouncey never deserves it. The Pouncey twins get it all the time. They are very, very well known. And for me, I would have given it to someone like J.C. Treader, the Brown center. Ben Jones has been really solid, and then Brian Linder as well. And then someone who's been pretty sneaky good has been I gotta say David Andrews, the Patriots, the Patriots center. So I sound like a broken record here, but I think all those guys deserve it over Marquise Pouncey. And then Ryan Kelly's been a solid center. Nothing special, but he's been solid. I think that we see that in the run game. The run game has been pretty average all season until late when they actually let Jonathan Taylor cook. But Jonathan Taylor has not had a lot to work with. If you look at Jonathan Taylor's tape, he's had to make a lot of moves at the line of scrimmage. Not a lot of holes for him. He's had to bounce around the tackles, make a man miss, and then go and use his speed and break away. So he hasn't had a lot of work with. So moving on to defense, and I'll let you take over a little bit here because it'll be more straightforward conversation. Defensive end, Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, and Frank Clark. What do you think about this selection?
Yeah, I think that Myles Garrett was pretty much a no-brainer. We all know what he's capable of. And I know he's had some controversy over his time, but even last year, before he hit Mason Rudolph with the helmet, he was the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. And if he sustained his level of dominance for the whole season, he would have been the Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. So I don't think that was really a hot take. Joey Bosa has been good in his own right, 7.5 sacks. I know the Chargers as a whole have not been the best, but Bosa has still been a very good player on that team. And then Frank Clark, I'm going to be very honest with you. I haven't seen too many Chiefs games just due to the fact that I can't get access to them. But he is a bit of a well-known player, and I think that probably helped his case. But maybe a guy like Stephon Tuitt or even Emmanuel Ogbah in Miami, who put up some slightly better stats, could have been in the running for that.
I really think that Ogba deserved a shot over. I think a lot of people deserve a shot over Frank Clark. Frank Clark is not a great pass rusher. I think someone like Jerry Hughes, what he's done as a pass rusher in Buffalo, has been really instrumental for them. And then you look at guys like Jonathan Gakwe. I think we all wanted to see him in the Pro Bowl because of that whole mid-season Jaguars fans were we're all pleading the AFC North to help screw the Vikings out of a draft pick there. But he had a case being made to be in the mix there. I think he was maybe the 4th or 5th ranked defensive lineman in the AFC. And then he played really, really well in his revenge game against Jacksonville last week. So I think there's a couple guys that deserve the conversation. And then one guy in particular, J.J. Watt. I think we forget how good he was. And being on a team as irrelevant as Houston was this season really hurt his case. But he's someone that definitely deserved it over a guy like Frank Clark. And that's one of my snubs is J.J. Watt.
Yeah, Frank Clark was 20th in the AFC in sacks. And I'm not going to list everyone, but there are many guys like Watt, Joey Bosa, Olivier Vernon, Justin Houston, Denico Autry, the 2 Colts guys, Ogba, Tuitt, and then obviously guys like Myles Garrett just ahead of him. So I think that Frank Clark could have been replaceable. But he's on the Chiefs, and he's a pretty well-known name. So that helps his case a lot.
We move on to the biggest snub in the entire Pro Bowl. No questions asked.
I thought this was a lock. I thought it was a lock in my eyes. Because he does have the name. He has a good enough name. Wow, I am shocked. DeForest Buckner, defensive tackle. I seriously don't know how he wasn't selected into the Pro Bowl. I'm not going to say single-handedly, but he pretty much transformed this whole Colts defense into the elite unit that he is. And he is the engine. He is the catalyst that drives this defense for a team that isn't the playoff hunt. Buckner has 7.5 sacks, which in the AFC is number 1 among defensive tackles, 2 forced fumbles, pass defended, and he's pretty high in tackles. I think he is number 1 for defensive tackles in the AFC. And just the impact that he has and his ability to change the game on the defensive line is really unparalleled in the conference. And then Quinnen Williams, statistically, he did pretty well, but being on a bad team like the Jets really does hurt your stock. Chris Jones did deserve it. I think he would have been my second starter behind DeForest Buckner. But what about Cameron Hayward and Calais Campbell? They've been all right, but they're two guys that, they have the name. They're on contending teams, so that definitely helps their stock.
I think Cameron Hayward definitely deserved it. He has been instrumental for the Steelers defensive line. I think he definitely deserved to be in it this season. Chris Jones as well. I think you look at a guy like Calais Campbell, and I don't want to read off too many PFF stats, but he ranked behind his rookie Justin Madubuike for the Ravens. He ranked behind Derek Wolfe, not behind Derek Wolfe, but right above him. So he was 39th overall, right behind John Franklin Myers of the Jets. And being behind the second guy on the Jets is not the best statistic you can hope for. So I think that guys like Jeffrey Simmons definitely deserve. Jeffrey Simmons has been incredible.
He's been doing very well.
He is the best player on that defense for Tennessee. He is a monster. He is a freak. What he does for that team is absolutely instrumental. But going back to DeForest Buckner, he missed one game this season against the Titans. In the first game where DeForest Buckner played, they won 34-17. And they were able to control Derrick Henry and have a positive effect on that Titans offense. They limited them to 17 points. And then you look 2 weeks later, he's not playing. They lose 45-26. I know there's a lot of factors in a football game, but a difference that stark, you can have to attribute it to what he's done. I think the funny thing is, you look at Jim Irsay's tweet this year. He said some pranker was telling me that DeForest Buckner didn't make the playoffs. I told him that was a very funny joke. I mean, seriously, this guy was the second best defensive player, in my opinion, in the entire NFL, behind Aaron Donald, or maybe behind T.J. Watt too. But he has been absolutely incredible, single-handedly changed this Colts defense because they're not the best group of guys. You have guys like Archie, you have Justin Houston, but it's not the most impressive defensive line. He has single-handedly changed that team. And I think that he deserves recognition. And he could easily be an all-pro player. He's going to be a guy like Darius Leonard who doesn't get the respect he's in Indianapolis, but he'll get the recognition in the all-pro team, and he will be an all-pro first-teamer, in my opinion.
He should be. You think he's a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year? Maybe Watt, Donald, Buckner?
I could see it. I see more likely Watt, Donald, and then Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
But Garrett and Buckner are on the same level, in my opinion. They're both elite pass rushers. I think what separates him as a defensive lineman is his pass rush ability, and he's just lethal. He's an absolutely lethal pass rusher. But what makes Aaron Donald so good is he's great at both. Aaron Donald is an absolute monster. We'll get to that when we talk about the NFC. But moving on, outside linebackers, here we have the man, the myth, the legend, T.J. Watt. So,
no-brainer.
Followed by Bradley Chubb and Matt Judon. I think that you can maybe make a case for maybe putting not having Judon in there, but anyways, these guys are really good defenders. So
yeah.
I think that I don't know who I'd have ahead of
Judon. Maybe Bud Dupree.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a full resume because of his injury.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Then we've seen Alex Hyde be really impressive in his snaps that he's filled in for Dupree.
Yeah.
Outside linebackers is a really hard one because usually it goes to the pass rushers. You look at these guys, it's going to be T.J. Watt, Chubb, and Judon. Those are all pass rushers. Those are all pretty much defensive ends. So I think that it's hard to give it to anyone else, but the linebackers are not the strong suit of this team. And we'll get to that with the inside guys because there's not a lot of deserving candidates here. So as much as I'd like to put someone up, there's not really a suitable option to replace him with.
So for the inside linebackers, I think that Darius Leonard deserves it.
For sure.
What about Tremaine Edmonds? Because he is a very good player.
Tremaine Edmonds, I think he deserves it. He's been really good as the heart of that Bills defense. And I think that maybe you could look at guys like Miles Jack, but his team defense has not been very good, so I wouldn't give it to him. Alexander Johnson has been very good. last season and this season. And that's pretty much where the conversation ends for any other interior linebackers. I really like some of the Titans guys, Gerard Davis. So I don't think there's really anyone else that you can put up there. Sean Evans, maybe, but there's not a lot
Joe
of competition there.
Schobert, maybe.
I don't think Joe Schobert really deserves it either. So maybe you look at a guy like Devin Bush, but anyways, there's not a lot of competition at these positions. So I think they made the right two decisions there.
So for corners, we have Xavier Howard, who has played very well this season. How many picks does he have? He has like 9. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I don't think that's really something that we can dispute. And then Tre'Davious White and Marlon Humphrey and Stephon Gilmore. So the other, pretty much all 4 of them have always been, or at least in the last couple of years, have been in the mix for a Pro Bowl or even All-Pro position. Gilmore was Defensive Player of the Year. Tre'Davious White was not so far behind him in terms of production last year. Is there anyone, in my eyes, I think maybe J.C. Jackson.
I was going to go straight to J.C. Jackson.
Yeah, that could have replaced one of these guys.
I was going to say J.C. Jackson without a doubt. J.C. Jackson might be the better defender of the two of them on the Patriots. I think J.C. Jackson is an incredible defender. He's a guy that you've heard me talk about for a while in this podcast, and I will give my entire analysis to Chris Sims. Chris Sims has been on the J.C. Jackson train for a while now. I think he had a top 10 defender at the end of last season, the top 10 cornerback at the end of last season. So I think that J.C. Jackson is definitely deserving of that spot. So a guy that I would be much maligned to say, but Xavier Rhodes had a very, very good season. I'd be hard-pressed to say he didn't deserve the conversation. But these 3 guys have really good name recognition. Humphrey and White had great seasons. And then I'd probably put J.C. Jackson over Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah.
And then Denzel Ward, I think he deserves a shot too.
Mm-hmm. Free safeties, we got 2 of them, Minkah Fitzpatrick and Justin Simmons. Any thoughts on this?
Justin Simmons is very well deserved for the spot.
I think so too.
Been one of the best safeties in the league for the past couple of years. Has he gotten a contract yet with the Broncos? I'm not sure. I think he might have at the end of last season. But someone who I want to mention here at the safety spot is Julian Blackmon. He was a guy I was high out of Utah. I really like his film. He fell in the draft because of injury. Cold snapped up at 85. He has been a great player for them. I think he'd be hard-pressed not to mention any of the Bills guys, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. Both of them very solid, but you can't complain about Minkah or Simmons. Both of them have been really elite. But where you have to question this decision here is to have Tyrann Mathieu over Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates has been the best. Or Poyer, but Jesse Bates has been the best safety in the league this season by a long shot. PFF has him as the number 1 safety by a mile. Like, he is by far and away the best safety in the league. He is great in coverage. He is great in run defense. He has been all over the field. He's rangy. He's athletic. He has been incredible. So Jesse Bates deserves the spot. He and DeForest Buckner are the biggest snubs on this team.
Yeah, I was watching Bates yesterday because, once again, I can't really see too many Cincinnati Bengals games with the TV coverage that I have. And I was watching Bates against Pittsburgh, and he was all over the place. Like, I'd heard of him. You've mentioned him. And I kind of knew him on the radar as a bright kind of young star that we should watch out for. But he was all over the place against Claypool, Deontay Johnson. And, yeah, I think he is extremely underrated. And he is a big snub there.
He's only 24, and he's got a lot of room to grow. He is an incredible player. And I think Justin Tucker deserves a spot. Jake Bailey, I don't have too much complaints about him. And then Andre Roberts of the Bills, probably an adequate return specialist. Not really too many standouts this season. And then Matthew Slater is always, you got to give it to him. He's always one of the best special teamers in the league. So let's move on to NFC. Here's where we're going to have a lot more conversation because there's a lot less of a clear-cut upper echelon of talent. Starting with the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. Any complaints here?
I honestly don't think so. I think that even though Russell Wilson had, his not-so-great moments, those first couple of games of the season, he was really cooking. And we all know how talented Russell Wilson is, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. Aaron Rodgers is pretty undisputed. And I think Kyler Murray, he's played very well this season. and I don't really see anyone else that could, compete with him in the NFC.
And Kyler Murray, he didn't look great the past couple of weeks because of that shoulder injury, but last week he got his mojo back. He looked healthy. He looked great. He's been absolutely incredible. He's electric on the ground and he's electric in the air. I think that if you were to play the full season, Dak Prescott should have been the third guy there. But obviously, we were unable to watch Dak Prescott all year. Prayers up for Dak. He deserves the money. He deserves his money for sure. So moving on, we have running backs, and we have an interesting conversation here. We have Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Aaron Jones. Three very, very good running backs. But does anyone else deserve to have conversation?
I think first of all, Dalvin and Alvin, I just got that. Both are 100% deserving of this, and even Aaron Jones. But maybe David Montgomery in terms of, I guess, the impact that he's had on this team. But in terms of stats, which is what people look at when voting for Pro Bowlers, Aaron Jones has had the slightly better stats in terms of yards per carries, touchdown. But I think David Montgomery is someone in my eyes that should be in the mix.
He benefited off an easy schedule, but the offense is completely different with David Montgomery playing well. You look at the Bears the past couple of weeks, scoring 30 in back-to-back weeks, and it's been because of David Montgomery. He's opened up so much for Mr. Trubisky in the passing game, and he makes Mr. Trubisky look like a decent quarterback. So
that's hard to do.
I was very high on David Montgomery last year. I drafted him in fantasy. I was like, yeah, this is my guy. This was my Jonathan Taylor last season. I'm going to draft David Montgomery. He's my favorite running back last season, I think, coming out. So he didn't show it last year's season. I was a little bit disappointed. I let that recency bias and that fantasy bias get in my head. But he's been great this season. He really deserves some conversation for what he's done at the end of the year. And I think that you look at a guy like Antonio Gibson, because that Washington offense is dreadful. And without Antonio Gibson, they'd have probably like 3 points a game. So he has been absolutely spectacular coming out.
So for receivers, I think this one, for a lot of the guys that we do, there are a lot of guys that were quote unquote snubbed, but it's hard to argue against Devontae, DeAndre, DK, and Justin. As Devontae and DeAndre, I don't really have to do any explaining. We all know how talented they are. DK has had some monster games and has had a big social media boom, which definitely helped him in the voting. And Justin Jefferson is really, I bet Eagles fans are just pissed. He has been very special as a rookie, and I think he was deserving of the spot as a Calvin Ridley fan.
I think I had Justin Jefferson as my number 8 player in the draft coming out, and I got a lot of slack for that. But I think we'd be hard pressed not to say that Justin Jefferson's a top 8 receiver in the NFL right now. He is that special. He is a elite route runner. He is creative. He is great in contested catch situations. His hands are gluey. He creates so much separation. He is a special receiver. Him and Adam Thielen, who deserves a shout, is really good. I think that only spot you can argue is DK Metcalf with his consistency, but his ability to take over a game, and when Russ is cooking, he's spectacular. But I'd say Allen Robinson and Adam Thielen definitely deserve a shout over DK Metcalf. And Calvin Ridley for sure. I think those 3 guys all were in contention for that DK Metcalf spot. And if it were me, I'd go Hopkins, Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, and probably finish it out with Allen Robinson.
I would replace Robinson with Ridley. Maybe a little bias there. Actually, entirely biased there. But
I can't fault you for that. He's been great.
Yeah, he's been very special. Julio has had a down year. He's had some injury struggles. And just production-wise, he's been pretty inconsistent. But Ridley has really picked up the slack. And I think that, especially with the start that he had, it's going to be tough for him to kind of replicate that next year because I think defenses will key in on him. But he is still a very special talent, special route runner, quick, fast, and he is a great target for Matt Ryan as he's getting up there in age. But what's going on is they're going to have 2 extra spots for both the AFC and NFC. Is that right? It's this like stupid Madden thing where the most touchdowns you score with an offensive player in Madden gets a Pro Bowl spot. So after this, I think I'm going to go download Madden on my Xbox and play for 14 hours straight with Calvin Ridley. We got to get him in.
He'd be deserving of the spot if he were to get in. But moving on, we've got tight ends. And for the NFC, it's a lot harder. There's not two elite guys like Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. Usually we'd slap in at George Kittle because George Kittle is absolutely spectacular. But the best tight end in the NFC this season has been TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah.
From a blocking perspective and a receiving perspective, there's no one else that even matches his level of blocking prowess. He is the third highest graded pass run blocker behind Dallas Goedert and Adam Troutman in the NFC. And then his receiving grade is quite solid. He's been a difference maker for this Detroit team, and potentially he could be utilized a lot more efficiently in a different offense. So good to see him in there. And then Evan Ingram, he has not been great. I would never have given him I wouldn't even have thought he was in the conversation for a Pro Bowl nod. I think you got to look at guys like Robert Tonyan and what he's done. I think Robert Tonyan has around 10 touchdowns this season. And
he has 10.
He has been absolutely spectacular. He has been solid. He's been relatively inconsistent, but he has produced. I think that even if you're looking at just stats alone, fantasy managers should have gotten this guy in there because I think there's a lot of guys thankful that they have Robert Tonyan on their team.
Yeah, just looking at the stats, they've played the same amount of games. Ingram has had 54 catches on 95 targets. Tonyan has had 49 on 55 targets, about 20 or so less yards, and 9 more touchdowns. So I think that Tonyan should have gotten the nod over Evan Ingram. But once again, we'll say it a million other times, popularity.
Now moving on to tackles, and there's not a lot of complaints here. David Bakhtiari is definitely the best tackle in the division. Trent Williams has been spectacular. Those are PFF's number 1 and 2 tackles in all of football. And then Teron Armstead is solid as always. My only complaint there is I put his teammate Ryan Ramczyk ahead of him. Ryan Ramczyk's played every game. Teron Armstead missed 2 games because of COVID, and he's been subbed out a couple times because of injury. But both of them have been really, really great tackles. And on a normal year, both of them would make the Pro Bowl. And we'll see if the Packers or the Saints make the Super Bowl, or maybe the Saints make the Super Bowl. But I think Ramczyk maybe deserved a nod over Teron. And then moving over to guard, Brandon Scherf has been great. Elton Jenkins has been really solid. He's a really good balance kind of guy, which makes him such a great player. You look at guys like Jonah Jackson, who has a similar mold to him, a really good balanced guard that fell in the draft a little bit. And then you've got Andrews Pete. God, I call him Andrew Stink because he did not deserve his $12.5 million contract. And it's just really upsetting to see because there was a time where people considered him a top 3 guard. But last season, I think PFF had him as like a 50-something grade. And this season, it's probably pretty similar. He has been dreadful. He's always hurt. He's never on the field. I think he got hurt last game as well. He's been worse than he's the 57th ranked guard according to PFF as a 58.2. He has been dreadful. He has been absolutely awful. He's only marginally better than Cesar Ruiz, who they drafted in the first round. And then you look at guys like Nick Eason's been the best guard on this team, and he was a guy that we brought in as a backup, or he was supposed to be our sixth. Yeah, he was their backup. So really upsetting to see. He does not deserve it, and hopefully, here's my prayer. We'll give you a 3-time Pro Bowl offensive lineman, and we'll take a 3rd-round pick for him. So, Jets, you want to protect whoever you get. Jacksonville, you want to protect Trevor Lawrence. Take our 3-time Pro Bowler. He has an incredibly cheap contract. Please take him.
And then moving on to the centers, Jason Kelce and Frank Ragnow. Any thoughts on them?
Not too much disagreement. Frank Ragnow has been really good, but only one I'd really consider is Corey Linsley. He has been really, really solid for the Green Bay Packers. He's had his best season to date as a professional, and I think he deserved a little bit of a nod over Jason Kelce. But Jason Kelce's name and his long-term consistency and being the only consistent piece on this Philadelphia offensive line, everyone else has been injured. He has been the only one consistent. So I guess I can see how he got it.
So now we are on the defensive side of the ball, and Cam Jordan, pretty much a lock for me. He's been great, and seeing him in that one game, the first time the 2 teams played, Atlanta and New Orleans, when he just completely ate us up, and Matt Ryan was like his Thanksgiving lunch. So I don't see any issues with Cam Jordan, and What about Brandon Graham or Chase Young?
Chase Young definitely deserves it.
Yeah,
He's been
he is.
spectacular this season, and I think
Been a
there's
game
no complaints
changer.
about him. I think the problem comes in with Brandon Graham. There's two guys I want to talk. Well, and Cam Jordan. I actually might disagree with Cam Jordan. He has been really good this season. I think he's PFF's 11th graded edge, but his pass rush ability has not been as good as it has been in years past. He hasn't been as dominant, and there's been times where he's been the third best defensive lineman on the Saints team because we've seen moments of brilliance from Sheldon Rankins, David Onyemata, Marcus Davenport, and then my main man, Trey Hendrickson. He is a Pro Bowl snub. And he's a snub because he wasn't even on the ballot. He wasn't even eligible to be in the Pro Bowl because he's not a starter. This man has 12 and a half sacks, second in the league, joint with Aaron Donald on 200 less snaps. He was dominant against the Chiefs. He had 2 sacks. He was in Mahomes' face all day. If Mahomes was any other quarterback, he would have had 7 sacks that game. Trey Hendrickson has been a beast. I don't think we can pay him. We do not have the salary cap to do that. But he has earned he is earning a contract wherever he goes next season. I hope he stays with us because this man has emerged. He is the real deal. Trey Hendrickson is a stud.
He really is. I don't know how. Yeah, I didn't even know he wasn't even on the ballot. I thought he was.
Yeah, I was just going in there. I was like, okay, let me find my boy Trey Hendrickson in there because he deserves a Pro Bowl. And I'm like, where's Trey? Because did you watch the Chiefs game last Sunday?
Yeah, I watched the third and fourth quarter.
What did you think of Trey Hendrickson in that game?
He was dominant. And being a Falcons fan, I saw him in the other 2 games that we played, and he was always a force. I cannot believe that the NFC sack leader is not even on the ballot, because that's what people use as a reference to vote. Individual stats.
It's a shame to see. Very shame.
Out of pocket.
So moving on, we have interior defenders. So defensive tackles here. Aaron Donald, no questions asked. Fletcher Cox, he has been great. And then Grady Jarrett, 3 really solid guys. But I do want to mention a couple guys that I think were in contention there. I think you got to look at guys like, obviously, David Onyemata, I mentioned before, has been very, very, very good when he's played. And then Brent Urban's been very solid as a guy for Chicago. So I think those 2 guys deserve conversation, and then maybe talk about Jonathan Allen a little bit. But David Onyemata has been one of the better players. I think he's a great player, well-rounded in the pass rush and defensive and run blocking or run defense. My apologies there, but Onyemata deserved to be in the conversation. But I can see why Garrett was ahead of him.
Yeah, Grady Jarrett is very impactful. And if we did not have him, this defense would be like historically bad. Hey, both the Hawks and the Falcons suck at defense. Or just suck in general. But not the Hawks.
Moving on, we've got linebackers.
Yeah. Khalil Mack, Zadarius Smith, Jason Pierre-Paul on the outside, then the inside, Bobby Wagner and Fred Warner. I think that Smith and Mack were deserving, but maybe Jason Pierre-Paul. Do you have any other contenders for that position?
I've got 2 guys I think could have been ahead of JPP, and maybe even Zadarius. I think that Demario Davis deserves conversation. He is an incredible outside linebacker. I know he plays a lot of interior because they play a lot of 2 linebacker sets. So that's where you could consider him as. Then he'd definitely be in consideration for interior linebacker. But he is a naturally outside linebacker. So he is one of the best overall. He is the most well-rounded linebacker. I think last season he was 1 or 2 in run defense, pass rush, and coverage. He was that dominant last season, and he's been really, really good this season as well. And then you look at Montez Sweat. He has been really, really dominant for the Redskins. He and Chase Young have been an incredible pairing. His quickness off the outside has been just incredible to watch. And this Washington defense is legit. I think we said this at the beginning of the year in my prediction video that this defensive line would be the best in football, and they have proved to be probably
100%.
second best behind the Saints, in my opinion.
Yeah, somewhere
So
around that.
dominant group there. So only complaint would definitely be around JPP because I think guys like Levante David are even better linebackers than he is. But as I said, outside linebacker is basically defensive end part two, and that's how he got in.
So next up, Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, in for inside linebacker. Maybe Devin White, throw him in the mix as I wouldn't necessarily say a snub, but someone that could have been, involved in the voting process. Someone that could have been in the mix.
I'd say Deion Jones and Levante over him. I think they're better
really?
players in the division. I think Levante's a lot better of a player than White is. White is definitely deserving of a nomination, but there's no way you're getting ahead of these guys. These guys are the cream of the crop. These are some of the best guys in the league. And then
100%, yeah.
maybe look at Eric Kendricks as well, but obviously
Yeah, I was gonna say Kendricks.
he is a little bit of a down year, but you can't argue with Fred Warner and Mike Wagner. Those are the best two inside linebackers in the league, so no complaints there.
Cornerback Jalen Ramsey, we know what he can do. He's had an amazing season for this Rams defense, help revitalize them. Jair Alexander has also been great for Green Bay. Marshawn Lattimore has been pretty good. You think someone could have replaced Lattimore?
I do. I think that Lattimore, when he's on his day, he is a dominant. He is one of the best 5 cover man-to-man corners in the league. Put him on an island. The problem is that one is injury prone, and two, if your name isn't Mike Evans or a top 5 receiver, like he did a really, really good job against Tyreek Hill, all things considered. He was really good. So
even Julio,
he can match up with the best receivers in the league, but you put him on Alan Lazard, he gets toasted. I think a lot of that goes to scheme as well, and recently with the Saints defense really finding their own, I think it's been a lot better putting in situations that are more favorable for him. But you have to consider those games where he's just had lapses, and I think that I'd probably put a guy like Jamel Dean over him. I was really high on Jamel Dean coming out. I think I had him in the first round, and no one else did. And that's pretty much about it for who I would put over him because James Bradbury's had a very good season. And then maybe you consider a guy like Jason Verrett, who has been very solid. But that's about it. There's not been a lot of standout guys in the NFC, at least looking at the list of best corners. Do you think there's anyone else that you would have put over him?
No, not really.
Well, I know we're going to have a lot of guys over these safeties. So starting off, we have Budda Baker. Definitely deserved. He is the best safety in the NFC, maybe, or second best. But Seahawks duo of Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. Tell me why this is the worst positional group in the entire Pro Bowl voting.
Yeah, this just proves that they looked at interception count for Quandre Diggs, and Blitzboy got 8.5 sacks and has done literally nothing else since. And yeah, he has the name recognition. He was a beast in New York, but in Seattle, nothing has really translated well. So he is definitely not deserving. Budda Baker 100% is deserving. He's been dominant at times, and he has proven to be a very good safety. But who are your contenders? I was thinking maybe a guy like Harrison Smith or Marcus Williams or even Darnell Savage or even Jordan Fuller too, as guys that I would have above Diggs and Adams, because as long as you have 3 safeties in there and at least one of them is a free safety or a strong safety, I think that's okay, because in the AFC they had 2 free safeties and a strong safety.
Well, 3, because Tyrann is technically a free safety too.
Yeah. Well, in the NFC they have 2 strong safeties and a free safety, so that doesn't really matter.
So I would go for my strong safety in John Johnson. He has been really, really good. This Rams defense has been top 3 in the NFL. I think that you have to really attribute a lot of that to those big 3 guys of Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, and John Johnson. John Johnson has been a great safety. He was really good in the Super Bowl run. He had a down year last season, but he's back and he's playing really, really well. I think you have to look at guys like Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage of the Packers. They both been really, really solid for them. You look at Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith for the Vikings, and then you look at Marcus Williams for the Saints. I think all of those guys are more deserving, and I could probably list 10 more safeties that are more deserving. I could say Keanu Neal's more deserving probably.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they have not been good. So Marcus Williams, it'd be hard for me to give it to him on his best. He definitely deserves it. But at the beginning of the season, they were putting him as the solo safety on the field, and he's incredibly rangy, but he does not have the ability to cover an entire secondary. So there was a lot of mismatches and route concepts that the Saints were getting crushed by, and Marcus Williams was not great. But you look at the last couple of games, he has been all over the field. He's been in a 2-high safety set, and against the Chiefs, he was really able to thrive. You saw him have that hit stick where he lit up that one, Sammy Watkins, I think it was. He annihilated. Oh, no, it was Mecole Hardman. He annihilated Mecole Hardman.
Oh, yeah, that was just straight up dirty.
He has been rangy. He has had some great pass breakups. He can be trusted in coverage. He's been really good in run defense. But I think just because he was misused at the beginning of the season, he can't get it in. I would definitely put John Johnson and Adrian Amos over, though.
So moving on to the special team side, Young Koo, my man, he's definitely deserving of it. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we recorded. Jack Fox has had some great numbers, and he's deserving. What about Cordell Patterson or the long snapper special team guy?
I don't think I can really talk about Tyler Rott. I don't know anything about long snappers. Cordell's been a solid returner. Deontay would have won it if he was healthy, but Deontay's missed a lot of game time, so obviously he's not going to get it this season. He was all-pro last season. And I think for special teams, there's two guys I want to mention from the Saints. That is the best special teams team in the league. Justin Hardy and JT Gray. Both of them have been all-pro special teamers and have been incredible this season. You look at that forced fumble that they had in the Chiefs game. That was them. You look at a lot of the returns. JT Gray bulldozed a guy, ran down the field, cut inside, ran like 85 yards to make a tackle, and cut the guy off. Like, if I can find the clip, it was incredible because he came down and tracked. His just awareness was incredible. He is an incredible gunner. So I would mention both of those guys because I watched them, and I can't really speak about any other special teamers in the league because none of these pay attention to much special teams besides the Saints.
So that wraps up our Pro Bowl thoughts. I think that this year is very different. It's a Madden tournament, right?
Yeah, it's a whole week-long virtual event.
That's fun. It's probably going to be better than the real game. But as you know, the Pro Bowl, the actual honor of being named a Pro Bowl matters a lot more than the actual game played. They got to figure something out. I've just been a proponent of just canceling the game as a whole and doing more like other type of activities. Like they do that whole Pro Bowl field day type thing. They have races or lifting contests like they did 10, 15 years ago. I think that would be fun to watch.
I think one of the reasons why that got canceled is because I forget his name, but it was a running back, and during the beach volleyball, he had a horrific injury, and that just ruined his career. It was gruesome. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're not going to go back to like the skills games, but those awards matter. Being named a Pro Bowler matters because that's just incentives in a lot of people's contracts. It's the difference between a couple $100,000 for some players, and for guys on rookie contracts like Marcus Williams or Darnell Savage, just to talk about the safeties, deserve the money and really could have benefited from that. So I think that then as well, there's going to be no alternates because no one's going to be opting out of a virtual event. So there's going to be no alternates this season, and I think that's going to be a really big problem for a lot of people. So are you going to watch the events, Ishan?
Yeah, I think if it's televised, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. It's actually on my birthday. So if anyone's watching, yeah, wish me a happy birthday on the day of the Pro Bowl.
Well, that'll do it for us from Triple Threat. As we say every episode now, check out the website, triplethreatpodcast.com. Check out our latest episodes. We're doing one every day for December, and then hopefully a little bit of start of January. And hopefully we can find a rhythm going forward in the future to get you a consistent schedule going forward, because you look at our upload schedule, it has not been consistent until recently. So this is our daily video for you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Peace.